Hi and welcome to the Balloon Training Academy. Today we're going to learn to make fantasy flowers. For fantasy flowers you will need 18 gauge wires, Hobbycraft wires, binding wire, sometimes called stem wire, Stemtex, which is a sort of sticky kind of tape, some good floral scissors, a selection of balloons and some leaves and beads. Okay, so to get started, start with your floral wires, take one or two at a time, find the middle and bend in half. Squeeze so they're a little bit thinner than they were originally. Do this with about 7 wires. Once you've got your wires bent in half, pop those to one side, take your scissors and choose your balloons. I'm going to use Qualatex 5-inch balloons for these flowers. Cut off the very end of the balloon, just that little piece there. For this flower, we're going to use 7 balloons. Okay, let's just pop those bits to the side there, we don't need those. Take a binding wire, cut a piece off, take one of your bent 18 gauge wires, one of your 5-inch balloons, and pop the wire just inside, like this. Now we need to stretch the balloon over the wire. You can do this in mid-air, like I'm going to show you now, or you can use the edge of a table. Hold the end and pull the balloon down to the bottom of the wire. Now pinch, take a piece of binding wire and wrap it around tightly. You don't need very much wire, only a little bit, but it needs to be tight. Snip the wire, leaving about 1 millimetre, and push the end of the wire down. This just stops you stubbing your finger when you're using it. It can hurt if you do that. Take another wire and do exactly the same, and I'm going to make 3 petals here to show you the different types of petals that you can create. So the wire goes back in, hold on to the end, pull the balloon down, pinch at the bottom, take a piece of binding wire, wrap it around tightly, snip the wire and push that little bit of wire down. I'll do that one more time. Push the wire in, hold on to the top, pull the balloon down to the base, pinch, take your piece of binding wire, bind it around nice and tightly, snip, leaving about 1 millimetre, and push that part down. Okay, so we've now got 3 petals that we're going to work with. We're going to take the excess latex that's at the bottom of our petal and we're going to cut it off. It doesn't need to be there, and it can make our stem bulky if we leave it there. So we're just going to take those little pieces off. We don't need these bits. Okay, so these are the bits that come off, and now the bottoms of our petals are a little bit neater than they were before. So now to shape them. There are 3 main shapes that you can use. The fingers that we're going to use in this design are our thumb, these fingers, and these fingers. And these are the ones that are going to do all the shaping. So we're now going to take one petal, and we're going to hold with our thumb on our finger and our thumb on our finger, and we're going to hold about 1 inch down on the petal, and we're going to pull the wires out like this. Now with this hand I'm going to hold at the bottom, and with this hand at the top, and I'm going to pull. like this. See the shape that it's created. Now with my finger, I'm going to put it just behind the petal and flick over. I've now formed a very basic petal shape. Okay, so here's the second one. We actually start in the same way, using our thumb on our finger and our thumb on our finger. We take the sides of the balloon and the sides of the wire and we pull out, just as we did before. Then we hold at the base and we pull up, just as we did before. Only this time, instead of flicking it over, we're going to squeeze it in. We want to give a really pointed petal, a little bit like a poinsettia. So we're going to squeeze the petal like so. And this is going to give us a much more pointed effect. Once we've given ourselves this point, we can then give the flick like we had before. But look at the difference. One is much more rounded and one is much more pointed. So a different petal. The third one is a rounded petal, much more similar to that of a rose. So we pull out again, giving ourselves that rounded look. And now instead of pulling up, we're going to push down. So we're going to hold the sides of the petal and we're going to push down until we've got a rounded effect. If you want to give a variated rounded effect, take your finger and make some shapes at the top. Just manipulate that wire a little bit and then go back and straighten it out. This results in a very variated edge. Just gives you another dimension to your petal. So there we have it, 3 different petals that you can use for fantasy flowers. So if we're going to create one fantasy flower, we need 7 petals. I'm going to adapt these for the purpose of this demonstration. So we've got 2 sitting here. Here's our third. I'm going to go in and make another 4. I'm using the side of the table here, just as I said earlier. You can either use the side of the table or you can do it in mid-air. Bind that wire, snip, and this can become quite quick. You can become very quick at fantasy flowers, and really the quicker you are, the more money you can make, because the actual cost of the product is not very expensive at all. This is our 6th one now. Coming down, under the wire, snip, push down, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm doing my last one now. Petal, the balloon goes on, balloon gets pulled down, we take our little piece of binding wire, nice and tightly. The result of not binding the wire tightly will mean you'll end up with air in your petal and it won't pull straight when you're trying to make your flower. So your flower will end up looking a bit saggy rather than a nice tight petal. So I'm just going to go in and take this excess off like we did with the others. This one's okay. And this one here. Okay. So now the result I have here on my 7 petals. I'm going to just quickly give these a little stretch, just in order to show you how we put this petal together, this flower together. Pulling out, pulling up, and for this design I'm pushing in and giving a little flick. As you can see, although I've been doing it for a long time, once you get the hang of doing it, it's actually quite quick to do. So I've now got 7 petals, okay? What I now need to do is find myself something to use in the centre. And I like to use these little beads. They're sold for wedding favours. You can find them in floral wholesalers. I tend to buy mine in Whittington's. And these are just pretty little centres with beads on, but you can use whichever centre you like, and I'm sure there's lots of things that you can find to make centres of your flowers too. So I'm taking one of these, I'm going to take one of my petals and I'm going to attach this to here where I want it to sit in the flower. So if I want the centre to sit higher than the flower, I'll sit it like this. If I want it to sit it lower, I'll sit it lower down. Okay. Take your centre, take the piece of wire that the centre is attached to and just wrap it several times around your petal. So you're attaching it. We don't want to add too much other wire now at this stage. If there's some excess, which there is here, go in with your scissors and just trim that off. So that's just there, sat there, attached like so. Now take your other petals, one at a time, and place them together. So you don't have to panic too much that they're in exactly the right place, but it's more important that we get them at the same height, because we want all of our petals to be the same height. So I'm just going to start to piece them together now, just as you can see me doing here. I'm quite happy that I'm now holding them all at a similar height and my centre is coming out from the middle. Now we need to bind them again, but this time we're going to need to bind above where we bound before. This is really important. If you don't bind above where you bound before, the wire that you bound with originally will actually show through in your flower, and we don't want it to do that. So I'm going to take another piece of binding wire, cut a new piece off here, take the wire, and again, just as before, it needs to be tight. And I'm going to bind that around like so. As you can see, there's the original wire and there's my wire that I've just added on. You could do it a little bit lower if you wanted to. Snip it off just as before and bind that round. Okay, so we're now ready to use our Stemtex. Stemtex is a tape that's used for floristry. It's not sticky when we touch it, but it sticks to itself. It snaps off easily. Take the tape and hold it in place on your flower stem. And the way to use this tape is to stretch it and wrap it. Stretch it and wrap it. And as you're stretching and wrapping, bind it down the flower. If it snaps like so, no problem. Go back, put it back in place and just carry on. It sticks instantly back to itself. So I'm going to stretch and wrap this all the way down. Now I haven't gone in and cut any extra wires out. If you're using this flower and it's going to go as a table display and not be stuck into a vase or anything, you might decide to go in with your scissors and cut some of the other wires out to make the stem a lot slimmer. But you can see I'm just winding down here, get to the end, make sure you cover the end up because those wires can be pointy at the ends. There we go. And that's the result. Our stem has been covered, so no wires can be seen. Now we can turn the flower back over and we can start to place the petals where we want them to be. So starting with one, put your thumb behind the petal and pull the petal out. Now go to the next petal, put your thumb behind and pull the petal out. Now to the next, your thumb behind the petal and pull the petal out. And continue to do this all the way around your flower, pulling your petals out as you go. Now you could actually leave your flower like this if you wanted, but I like to go back in and do a little bit more shaping and decide where I want my petals to be. So I'm just going to come in and just shape my petals slightly more. You could even change the shape completely at this stage. If you do them all and you decide you don't like the way that you've done it, you can go in and you can change. So we can have these two petals at the top facing upwards, or if you prefer, you can have those coming down and you could give yourself a very full flower like this, more like a hibiscus maybe. It depends how you would like your flower to be. No two flowers actually need to be exactly the same. Their name is Fantasy Flower and everybody's fantasy is different. Okay. I'm quite happy with that one. So there we go. A fantasy flower made with latex balloons, a few wires, a little bit of Stemtex, and about 10 minutes of your time.